The endless revelations about Downing Street parties in lockdown has seriously damaged the reputation of the Prime Minister. But there's another group of MPs who've also been sullied, those stupid enough to back him up. Credit where it's due, though. While Boris Johnson's defenders may be shameless, you can't fault them for creativity. With each new leak about rule breaches, their excuses have had to become ever more imaginative. These are the politicians we think have risen to the challenge.
The Prime Minister's diary is like no other. It is extraordinarily busy. It's put together in 5-minute blocks, and he will bounce from phone calls with foreign leaders to national security meetings, to meetings on domestic policy, to meetings with advisors on COVID. And then someone comes and grabs him and takes him out of his study and briefs him in the 30 seconds whilst he's walking down the stairs on what he's going into next. I'm not suggesting for a second that he didn't know the rules. I am accepting that he didn't know that the event that he was about to walk into was breaking them.
The leadership of Boris Johnson this country has had has been so brilliant that he has got us through this incredibly difficult period, and he's got all the big decisions right. We have opened up faster than any other European country, thanks to the Prime Minister, and I'm honoured to be under his leadership.
It's a very funny party that is less than 10 minutes with colleagues you work with all the time. People broke off, I understand, from work, went to see the Prime Minister, gave him a cake, and then went back to work. And I bet, you know what political people are like, they probably talked about work when they were eating their bit of cake. I just don't recognise that as a party. And if that's the sort of parties you go to, they're not much fun, are they? That less than 10 minutes and from work colleagues, when you're talking about work, and disappear again.
Gathering doesn't matter.
Really thinking that the British people care about that. They realise that the Prime Minister got the first vaccination that saved billions of lives across the world. He took us through COVID. He nearly lost his life. He worked extremely hard for the people. All the hours and hours he worked, and you're worrying about less than 10 minutes when work colleagues brew a piece of cake.
When Europe stands on the brink of war and there is a cost of living crisis, can we please have a sense of proportion over the Prime Minister being given a piece of cake in his own office by his own staff?
And you're confident that it's OK for a Prime Minister who makes the rules to break the rules and thus break the law? That's OK?
No, of course it's not. And there are, I'm sure there are ministers that get parking tickets and speed fines too. They break the law. And lots of people break the law in small ways, sometimes unintentionally. And I just think he's not robbed a bank.
The Prime Minister was out on visits. He came back. He was working in the Cabinet Room. People came in, presented him with a cake on his birthday. They sang happy birthday. He was there for about 10 minutes. It was not a premeditated, organised party in that sense that the Prime Minister himself decided to have.
Well, invites were sent out.
Well, he, as far as I can see, he was, in a sense, ambushed with a cake. They came to his office with a cake. They sang happy birthday. He was there for 10 minutes. I don't think most people looking at that at home would characterise that as a party.
So Boris Johnson didn't know it was a party, and even if he did, he's been such a great leader, he should be allowed to break the law. But anyway, it really wasn't a party, just work colleagues gathered together to eat birthday cake and sing happy birthday. Though, even if it was a party, we should have a sense of proportion. But sure, it was a party. At least he didn't rob a bank. No, of course it wasn't a party. It was a cake ambush. Nadine Dorries threw in her 2 cents too, saying, so when people in an office buy a cake in the middle of the afternoon for someone else they are working in the office with and stop for 10 minutes to sing happy birthday and then go back to their desks, this is now called a party. Whether or not you called it a party, it was against the lockdown rules, which you guys wrote. That's the issue. Of course, where I agree with Nadine Dorries, this doesn't sound like an amazing party. But having 30 people sing happy birthday, even for 10 minutes, it was something that many people passed up. They passed it up because they were told to pass it up. One of them was Josephine, aged 7, who wrote this letter to the Prime Minister in March 2020. So she wrote, Dear Prime Minister, I want to let you know it is my birthday today, but I am staying at home because you asked us to. I think Mummy and Daddy might have to cancel my party, but I don't mind because I want everybody to be okay. Please keep working hard to keep us all well. Are you remembering to wash your hands? Lots of love. Josephine, aged 7, in brackets, today. Very sweet there. Boris Johnson replied, "Dear Josephine, happy birthday. I am glad to hear you are staying at home, though I am sorry to hear about your party. We have all got to do our bit to protect the NHS and save lives, and that is really what you are doing, so well done. You are setting a great example. We are working around the clock to keep people safe, and if we work together, we can send coronavirus packing. And once we have done that, you can definitely have a party with your friends. In answer to your question, I am regularly washing my hands with soap and water for 20 seconds, the time it takes to sing happy birthday twice. Best wishes, Boris Johnson." If it takes 20 seconds to sing happy birthday twice, then that 10 minutes he spent at that cake party starts to sound a little bit longer, doesn't it? What were you doing for the other 9.5 minutes? Boris Johnson there saying you were setting a great example. He is, of course, right, or he was right. She was. It is just a shame a 7-year-old can set a better example than the most powerful man in Britain. Dahlia, who comes off worse from all of this? Boris Johnson, who, you know, he broke those rules. It was offensive to do so, but I suppose breaking rules and having a party, at least it's kind of like a normal human thing to do. I think standing up and calling it a cake ambush and saying that at least he didn't rob a bank, in a way, it's kind of more embarrassing than the original crime, isn't it?
I mean, this has been the most tedious week of watching the most boring people in the world having an argument about what is and is not a party. I'm just like, oh my God, it's like nails on a chalkboard. But I mean, that whole package is just hugely embarrassing to watch. But obviously, you know, that is par of the course of being in Boris Johnson's cabinet or being in Boris Johnson's government. I've seen people defend him for much worse and for much, more absurd reasons. But, you know, reading that letter from that young girl, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again because I think it's an important point that gets lost in a lot of this tedious and embarrassing and absurd conversations that we're having about 10 minutes doing this or that is a party or not. The point is that for those of us who, unlike the Prime Minister, who, unlike our government, did abide by those rules and did stay at home and did take care to, you know, even if we didn't necessarily feel like we were particularly vulnerable to the virus ourselves, we sacrificed things and we gave things up so that those who are vulnerable can be okay, and in order to retain the integrity of our NHS service. For those of us who did that, we did the right thing and we should not regret that. We saved lives by following the scientific advice, and essentially, even though now it can feel like, oh, why did we bother? Oh, we shouldn't have bothered. No, it was incredibly important. And it shows us again, as I've said before, we are better than our government. And it's important to remember that because there's a good chance that at some point in the not too distant future, there will have to be some kind of level of restrictions or collective public health effort, like, for example, getting another booster dose of the vaccine, that will require us all to do our bit and to have faith that everyone else is doing the same in order to make it effective. And it's important to maintain a sense that if we had to do it all over again, we would do it the same way because it was ultimately the right thing to do. And that is, in a sense, the dangerous precedent that is being set, that has been set by this government, that will be difficult to shake off. And it's this breaking down of communality and of solidarity and this sense of, even if everyone is doing something as part of a public good or a collective effort, if you can get away with not doing it, then you should do that, because, you know, it's this kind of very sort of game theory way of looking at the world. It's actually very Thatcherite, of, you know, seeing it as, you know, yourself as separate from the collective effort, as somehow as an individual in a little siloed box. Because the next time that we are in a crisis, whether it's a public health crisis, whether it's a climate-related crisis, whether it's a financial crisis, and people are being asked to do their bit in the name of a greater good, in order to protect their communities and particularly to protect those that might be more marginalized or more vulnerable than them, we don't want people to think that, oh, well, last time I did that, it turned out that I was a mug, or it turned out that the very people setting those rules were doing something else. And so I think it's important that we try and take a moment to remember that, rather than, you know, over focusing on how clownish these MPs look, as much as it is entertaining to watch them debase themselves. In the name, for what? For Boris Johnson? A man with a haircut like that? I mean, it's embarrassing.